So habitual oversharer Jada Pinkett is releasing a memoir following in the footsteps of her husband Will Smith, who released a memoir just last year about his life. And much like Will's work, Jada's book is drawing the most interest for its promise to provide even more details of the messy and dysfunctional relationship between her and Will that we just can't get enough of. It's just what everyone wanted. I don't blame Jada overall here, because the reality is the media, us, we want more of it. I wouldn't be making this video if not. We kind of complain about them being oversharers, but let's be real about the way this equation really works. We will get a bit gossipy today, and while I will be trying to apply my usual analysis and tact, I want to be clear that I haven't perfectly followed this story to feel super 100% confident that I'm going to get everything right in this long, complex, and ridiculous story that just won't die. So feel free to drag me in the comments for whatever I get wrong here. I probably won't be reading them, but go ahead and get it out there. I can't bring myself to fully go through the whole story, so here's the cliff notes. In the early mid-90s, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett became the Black Hollywood couple. Will was an A-lister, megastar, and was really breaking the mold on what Black actors were able to do in Hollywood. Jada wasn't as successful, but she was still a superstar in her own right and a sex symbol, and was immensely talented, not just in acting, but in many other venues. They were the epitome of Black love and were constantly marketed as such, a marketing strategy that they definitely themselves played into. After around 15 years of being perfect, by the early 2010s, rumors about their marriage began to emerge, with the constant accusation that they had an open marriage. Rumors that they often denied or downplayed, which is completely sensible for every possible reason, especially because this was a time where other forms of partnering and non-monogamy were far more taboo, especially among Black people. A lot happens in between time, but in 2018, Jada started the Red Table Talk, which was a pretty popular and I would say overall good talk show starring Jada, which led to tons of ink and gossip on their relationship. And here's where a lot of people really start to turn on Jada, because on several occasions in these talks, she would come off as careless with Will's image and pride, exposing her rampant unhappiness with their marriage, implicating an unhealthy devotion that she had toward the memory of hip-hop legend Tupac, who died way back in the mid-90s, with whom she shared a close but non-romantic relationship with, and just other little things that even if you didn't take issue with Jada, it just felt like things she shouldn't be saying publicly about Will, and I'll come back to why that's key a bit later. This all came to a head when it was exposed that Jada had an affair of sorts with C-tier R&B singer August Alsina sometime between 2016 and 2018. I'm not going to try too hard to figure out the full timeline of details there either, but it seemed to be where many people, in this case, a lot more Black men, turned against Jada fully. And I argue that the ire toward Jada stemming from this is somewhat fair, but also most of it is very much not. And even worse, we're really not done. Because the Red Table Talk show was still going on at the time, instead of just letting the news cycle pass on this, Jada sat down with Will to process, discuss, and in some ways try to spin this extramarital affair as not being as bad as it seemed. And it was a really bad look for both of them.
I felt like it was important to come to the table to really clear the air. Somebody made a statement for me that wasn't a statement I made, that went.
For Jada in particular, though, she just really came off as the stereotype that a lot of men have about women refusing to be accountable for the ways in which they hurt the men close to them. Jada, in many ways, dances around the nature of this relationship and at one point calls it an entanglement, which makes Will, who this whole time has always played the supportive and aloof partner, break character, where he has to almost side-eye her and her use of that term and confront her with being accountable for what it really was, a relationship that she had with another man. And I might add, an overtly toxic one at that. Because Jada also glosses over what I felt were concerning power imbalance dynamics between her and August. The fact that August was her son's young friend and that there was a 21-year age gap when they met, let alone a multi-million dollar and power and clout gap between them. August was also in recovery from a substance addiction problem, suffering from chronic illness, suffering from mental illness, and estranged from his actual mother. The relationship started with him coming into the care of Jada and I guess Will to some extent. And he talked about how the older, emotionally expressive and nurturing Jada felt like a solve to that space of life he was in. August was an adult. I want to be clear that it's not appropriate to call him a victim per se. However, if you know anything about the unspoken historical epidemic of young black men who are victims of sexual assault by black women, and I do know a bit about this, it's almost always a very similar situation that August was in. It's usually vulnerable or socially ostracized young men and boys and prospective caretakers like babysitters or close friends to their mothers, teachers, or women that take them in off the streets. There's also the fact that if and when August started to have issues with this relationship, Will and Jada had the power to pretty much squash him unless he did what he decided to do and make it extremely public. And even then, I mean, part of it is because his music, I don't think is all that good, but part of it is because he doesn't have the power and clout to be anything other than the side dude of Jada Pinkett. Now, you may not feel like this was a toxic relationship. I personally don't know how you can't, but I'll just say, if you disagree with me, imagine if this was your son or close cousin or brother or nephew or any man that is close to you in this type of relationship, how you might feel about a woman like Jada under those circumstances. But here's also what we have to be clear about some of the reasons why so many black men have smoke for Jada that I don't agree with. Definitely more smoke than she deserves, or at least smoke for all the wrong reasons. Like, I keep seeing people compare Jada Pinkett to Future, which gets on my damn nerves. For all the talk of women refusing to be accountable, what is much more common is how many black men will do everything in their power to point to the image of a black woman misbehaving and say, see, they be doing it too, or some other dumb shit like that. Whenever something happens to a black woman by a black man in the public eye, it's conspiracy theories and excuses and random white woman TikTokers, which of course in and of itself is a clear lack of accountability. Niggas are comparing Jada to Future to score points in the gender wars. And by doing so, they're completely missing the entire point. It's really whataboutism. There's this desire to put Jada's behavior in line with more toxic images of black men who are overt predators and pedophiles. And I guarantee someone in the comment section is going to bring up some rumor they heard from DJ Academics or something about this one time that she supposedly did XYZ to Webster or Lil Wayne or something. I don't know. I feel like I've heard it 100 times, but I've never seen any verifiable evidence. It's frustrating to try to have serious conversations about black men's issues when other dudes clearly are unserious about anything except attacking black women. And then there's the general presence of misogyny and misogynoir that will always hypercharge any criticism of black women in the public eye, whether deserved or not. Society loves to humble women. Society loves to humble black people. So humbling black women, that's just the American way. But the problem is that there is a deeper conversation as to why Jada in particular bothers so many black men so much with her behavior, myself included. And it's not as simple as misogyny or gender wars nonsense. So understanding that this is not about that stuff, let's try to dig a little deeper. Aside from the concerning nature of her relationship with August, I think a lot of black men find themselves very angry at Jada because of what she did to our image of Will Smith and what that says about black men's experiences seeking love and seeking to do things the quote unquote right way. So let's go back to Will. I talk about Will in my Black Boyhood video, so please take a look there when this is over for a longer discussion on him. But one significant thing I point out is that Will is an icon of black masculinity and has greatly shaped our image of what aspirational black masculinity should look like. If there were a Mount Rushmore for black men, at least black men around my age, it'd probably be several men I've talked about in my content before: Muhammad Ali, Barack Obama, Deion Sanders, and Will Smith. These guys are the mold in which black men have often tried to imagine ourselves in the face of a society that has constantly tried to debase us into the worst possible images, regardless of how hard we try to reject those images. Out of all these figures, Will was probably the most universally beloved and with the most spotless, uncontroversial record. There's no extramarital affairs or drone strikes on his resume. How could you not aspire to be like Will Smith? And how could you not want a partner as talented, charismatic, beautiful, and seemingly devoted as Jada Pinkett? That was the image that black men had of Will and Jada that we put in songs, hip hop or R&B up until the August Alsina saga. It's an image they worked hard to protect, even as it became clear that they hadn't been that perfect image of black love since the early 2000s. But the part that bothers black men is in the different ways that both Will and Jada talk about this change in their relationship. Will seemingly keeps trying to present an idea or image that they are still together for the most part, that they are apart physically, but that they are still in love, devoted, and connected, etc. But I think what people are getting from Jada is that this just isn't her truth and maybe never has been. And when you hear the snippets of what got everyone in a tizzy recently from Jada, yeah, it sounds like she's greatly done with the relationship and has been done, but can't bring herself to divorce him, which is kind of devastating for a lot of black men to hear, because it's this proof that no matter what we do or how we do it, we will never be worthy of love, which, quiet as is kept, so many black men deeply fear. If you think all these salty, ridiculous alpha male podcasts aren't coming from a place of fear and insecurity, you're not really using your listening ears. But here's where I have to be critical of Will. In my opinion, just my opinion, Will is the root cause of his own demise in this situation. For a lot of understandable reasons that stem from Will's traumas, he really wanted a classic marriage and family dynamic. He wanted to be seen in that way that black people saw him before all this drama came out, even if it wasn't working or wasn't real. They both have went on record to talk about how Jada never really wanted the type of life that Will worked hard to provide for them. Jada, in fact, had left Hollywood and was about to start living off the grid as a farmer when Will asked her out on a date. Jada never wanted to get married and cried throughout their entire wedding. And in many ways, it seems like Will kept trying to press Jada into a role in which she wasn't interested in. And Jada understandably felt conflicted between following her head and her heart, because as a black woman in society, she's got her own version of the same fears and insecurities about love and femininity as black men do about love and masculinity, but had, for whatever reason, lost her desire to play the game, which I would advise is probably the way to go for the most part. But then here comes Will with all the pieces to this puzzle done, except for the one piece that she can provide. He was offering her something that black people, black women, are not supposed to have: the idyllic image of hetero-monogamous black American love. As a black woman, she should have been down on her knees thanking God that she had found a man so good who wanted to marry and take care of her. And I completely empathize with her struggling to find the strength to reject it and say, no, not me. I fucks with Tupac. Tupac's ghost. I don't know. But this culminated in the now famous story of Will throwing Jada a huge extravagant birthday party for her 40th, the exact opposite of what she would have wanted, which sent her into a deep depression and seems to be where their relationship began to dissolve. This again is my inference, but it feels like when Jada turned 40, she decided she was done and no longer going to force herself to fit into the framework that Will had built for her and that society had told both of them that she was supposed to want. I admire her for deciding to transgress against those roles and to seek true happiness for herself. But that's why I have to start side-eyeing Jada, because, ma'am, you can leave that man. You can get a divorce, please. Or if you are going to keep playing along, can you play along with a little more effort? Because one thing that is clear, despite Will's flawed way of trying to love Jada, I think he loves her, or at least loved the idea of her, or at a minimum, loved her enough to try to protect her in the public eye. Say what you want about the nature of their relationship. While there have been rumors around Will and other women, there's never been the type of dramatic blow up that was caused by August, partially because August was such an unwise and inappropriate person to develop a complex relationship with in the first place, but mostly because it seems that Will cares so much more about protecting Jada than Jada does about protecting Will. Whatever women Will has messed with over the years in their separate lives era, they've at least kept with the program. And that's what upsets a lot of black men. To some of y'all, this is gonna sound completely wrong, but one of the reasons why I think a lot of people struggle in building relationships with even the most high character, emotionally available black men is because people just assume that we don't need protection like anyone else in the relationship. The irony of patriarchy a lot of times is that even those who have some understanding of it as a concept don't fully get how it applies to the way that men are forced to function and experience the world, and that black men in particular are uniquely vulnerable to the ways in which patriarchal thinking limits our ability to engage with our emotions, and more importantly here, limits the ability for others, many black women included, to partner with us while seeing us as emotional beings in need of protection for those emotions. So when men are hurt in their intimate partnerships, It feels like nobody thinks it's a big deal or takes it seriously. And by nobody, I mean pretty much everyone involved. You keep talking about your feelings as a man, and you're going to end up on one of those sassy man apocalypse TikToks. That's just the reality. For a lot of men, you just end up burying that shit until you empty it into a bottle or something. And then we see Will looking like this, making these faces. And it may be amusing, but I think a lot of black men recognize what this face means he's going through. For Will, this lack of understanding as an emotional being hits home hard because, as I said earlier, he is this pillar of aspirational black masculinity. His swag and charisma and style is foundational to how black men see themselves and how they seek to be seen, because we identify with the pressure to perform as he's done in order to be loved. But like most black men, Will's swag stems from a place of fear and insecurity. In his book, Will talks about how he developed his humor and ability to joke around as a defense mechanism from growing up in an abusive household, where he joked and acted silly as a way to de-escalate violence that he, his siblings, and his mother received at the hands of his father. There's a sociological concept called the cool pose, which describes the phenomena of, you know what, this wasn't supposed to get that deep. I will save that for a future video. I will just leave it at Will's recklessness with his heart trying to forge an idyllic world for himself as a black man with an amazing woman is easy to understand and empathize with. Will being the consummate good guy who's never messed up, never stepped out, never played into negative stereotypes of black men, did all the things black men are told we need to do in order to be happy and respected and loved. And that to see Will Smith, of all people, not be loved by his own wife for Tupac, I think that's too much for a lot of dudes to handle. I don't even think Tupac liked women, y'all. Y'all ain't ready for that. And so instead of being fair and analyzing the situation as a whole and the incorrect ways of how we try to view love and relationships in the first place, we put it all on Jada, because that's how patriarchy works. Instead of facing the totality of how broken the gender constructs that we live under are, we would prefer to just see her as some type of cold, uncaring monster that put this man through all of this stuff. And I won't lie, there's definitely something to the ways in which Jada seems to just be watching this man fall apart. But at the end of the day, it's just as clear that they want to stay married and they want to stay connected to each other. They, at this point, deserve whatever they get. So gentlemen watching, if you're deeply bothered by this, try to see the bigger picture. If possible, seek therapy or a support group or something to work through why you're mad at Jada when that anger and frustration should probably be pointed elsewhere. I'm FD Signifier, and for now, this has been light work.